What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are looking at the Polar Ignite 2. Now, as of the filming of this video, the Polar Ignite 2 has not yet been released, however, it is due to be released by the end of April. This watch has a lot of features and is relatively inexpensive, and it is likely going to be priced at $229.99 when it is released. So in this video, we are going to be going over some of the features. I have been using it for about 2 weeks before I'm making this video, and I've run with it every day for those 2 weeks. Now, it is marketed as a fitness watch. Maybe this is the first time you're buying a watch to track your fitness activities. That's the audience that Polar is going for with this affordable option. And I have to say, it's pretty good. It's very good for what it is. Now, it does blend smart features with a sports watch. So as well as tracking your activities, you are able to get notifications. Now, you can't reply to these notifications. It's incoming only. But whatever notifications that you usually get on your phone, they will be sent to your watch. But while we're talking about notifications, it's important to know that the notifications do not come through to the watch when you're in an activity, which in my opinion, it's kind of an oversight, because when I'm out for a run, if I've got my phone tucked away in a pocket, I don't want to have to dig it out to see a notification. I'd rather just check my watch. Seems like that would just be a firmware update, but as of yet, it hasn't happened. But I guess one would argue that if you're on your workout, you don't need to be checking notifications, you need to be focusing on the task at hand, right? I'm sure that would be Polar's answer. The watch is 43 millimeters in diameter, so it's not a huge watch. I think it fits my wrist pretty well, but I'd also say that it would fit a lot smaller wrist than mine. It weighs in at 35 grams, so it is incredibly light. It does have an LED screen with a 240 by 204 resolution. Now, 204 sounds a bit strange. Usually watches are 240 by 240, but in this case, the bezel is a bit wider at the bottom here where it says Polar, and that's the reason for the 204 vertical resolution. As far as styling goes, I actually really like the way this looks, and it's very comfortable on my wrist. It does have kind of a scalloped edge around the outside, which I think looks really sharp, and the watch bands are removable. Now, Polar will release a lot of specialty watch bands for this watch. This blue band is Storm Blue, but you can also get watch bands with Swarovski crystals. Pretty cool. It's also a 20 millimeter removable band. Very easy to remove just with your fingernail. You just slide that off and the watch band comes off very easily. You can also replace them with any standard 20 millimeter band. Pretty handy. Now, if you're familiar with Polar watches, the UI is going to be very familiar to you. Something that Polar has added from the first Ignite, which was released 2 years ago, is controls for music. Now, there is no storage on this watch, so you still have to carry your phone with you, but if you do have your phone tucked away in your pack, tucked away in a pocket, you don't have to dig it out to skip tracks or to change the volume. It does have a weather widget, which is pretty handy. It tells you various things: temperature, humidity, which direction the wind coming from, how strong the wind is, and the temperature for the next several hours. I think Polar's done a pretty good job with it. The way the data shows up on the watch face is actually very pleasing, and it gives me all the information that I'm looking for. Guys, before we go any further, if you like running watches, if you like running with a watch and knowing all your data, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It helps the video, it helps my channel immensely. Thank you very much. The Polar Ignite 2 does have a wrist-based heart monitor and built-in GPS. The wrist-based heart rate monitor is Precision Prime Sensor Fusion technology. It's a mouthful. And if you're into the whole running watch thing, you may have noticed that Polar came out with the Precision Prime 2.0 for their Vantage V2. The Vantage V2 is like their flagship watch, and I have done a review on that, so I'll link to that right up there. But here's the thing, the Precision Prime in the Ignite 2 compared with the Precision Prime 2.0 in the Vantage V2, I've actually had better luck with this, the Precision Prime, than I have with my Vantage V2. Now, wrist-based optical heart rate monitors are notoriously fickle. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. They work for some people more than they work for other people. I was getting better heart rate results from this than I do with my Vantage V2. Now, I'm not gonna look too far into it. I just found that of note during these 2 weeks that I've been testing it. And while I've been testing this Ignite 2, I have also been testing the Vantage M2, but that's gonna be reviewed in a separate video. I'm also gonna go over some heart rate data in a few minutes. The Ignite 2 is controlled by a single button on the left-hand side. All other controls are done by the touchscreen. And the touchscreen it's pretty good. It's not perfect. It can be a little laggy at times, but it is more than responsive enough to get the job done. As far as the GPS goes, I have been wearing this watch on my right hand, I've been wearing the Vantage M2 on my left hand, and I've been comparing both watches with each other. So how do they measure my heart rate? How do they measure distance? The data I've been getting from these two watches are very similar. You're not going to notice that your watch is different from anyone else's. One of my favorite features of the Ignite 2, and actually the whole Polar line, is the sleep tracking. I love how much data it gives me. And if you like the sleep tracking, you can have that as one of your primary watch faces. So it looks like last night my nightly recharge was okay, which is pretty good. It usually isn't good. If we hit the screen of this watch face, we can see that my ANS charge was down, my sleep charge was up. Then we can just scroll down and we can access some of the data. So let's just open this and see my sleep details. Whoa, 82, much above normal. Well, turns out I didn't have to work the day today that I'm making this video. That means I didn't wake up to an alarm and I didn't cut my sleep short. The watch recorded that. If we scroll down, you can see that I got a mammoth 9 hours and 21 minutes of sleep. Right below that, we can see my average sleep of 7 hours and 12 minutes. I was actually asleep for 8 hours and 48 minutes, which is a 94% sleep to laying down ratio. Numbers that I'm seeing on the watch kind of makes sense. Looks like I did have above average sleep interruptions last night. We can see here that my average 28-day sleep interruption is 11 minutes and it was 13 minutes last night. And I went through 6 sleep cycles and had 13% of REM sleep, 7% of deep sleep, and 74% light sleep. Now, all this data is visible on the watch. It's also visible on the Polar Flow app, which just makes everything a lot easier to see and check out. Now, at the time I'm making this video, I have actually already done enough exercise for the day, at least according to the watch. So there is a feature called FitSpark, and FitSpark basically gives you recommendations, it gives you ideas for workouts. And if there is a workout that it thinks you need to be doing, like stretching or strength, it will actually give you step-by-step details on how to conduct that workout. This is the activity screen, and as you can see right now, it says I've done 263% of my daily activity. If we open up this screen, 263%, I've walked 23,000 steps and burned about 3,800 calories. Let's take a look at my weekly workouts. So we are towards the end of the week, and this week I have done 19 hours and 6 minutes of exercise. So this week I have burned 14,000 calories, gives you a breakdown of your zones that you're training in. Let's open up this morning's run. I ran for 1 hour and 22 minutes, covered 10.08 miles, an average heart rate of 133, a max heart rate of 185. Remember this, remember the max heart rate of 185, because we're gonna get to that in just a second. From the Polar Flow app, you can choose from 130 workouts to load onto your watch. There is a widget called the Serene Breathing app. And we're not going to spend too much time on this, but basically it walks you through breathing exercises. Kind of helps calm you down. You get to follow the little bubbles on the screen as you breathe in and then breathe out. Polar claims the battery life is up to 5 days in watch mode. If you use it continually with GPS on, so if you're going out for a really long running session, the GPS will last up to 20 hours. You can also reduce that ping rate of the GPS satellites, and you can extend the battery life in GPS mode up to 100 hours. What I really like about Polar watches is that when you go to an activity, before you start it, it will give you a little indicator at the top of the screen that tells you how many hours you have left. So every time I go for a run, I know that I have X number of hours because it tells me, depending on the battery life that's left in the watch. You can see right now, as I'm holding it in front of the camera, the screen is black because it doesn't have an always on display. If you want to activate it, it does have a motion-based wrist sensor. So whenever you move your wrist, it turns on. Now, I have to tell you, it's a little finicky. If you don't give it enough of a flick, the screen won't come on. You can also turn the screen on by just pressing the button. Now, there is a way around this when you're in an activity. You can set it so the screen is always on when you're out for a run. Now, while this is a nice option to have, it's going to significantly drain the battery. I actually just stepped away from the camera for about 45 minutes to do a live Peloton ride, but that also reminded me of probably the biggest feature that the Ignite 2 has, and that is that it can transmit heart rate data from the watch to other fitness equipment. Now I do have a Peloton sitting just on the other side of this camera, so let me show you how to do it. To transmit the heart rate from the Polar Ignite 2 to anything else, in the case of Peloton, we're going to access our profile, we're going to choose any ride, just so we've got something to open up. So just like you would normally add a heart rate monitor, we're gonna open up the heart rate monitor setup. This is how you do it on the watch. Start training, and you're gonna choose the activity that you're doing. This is a spin bike, so I'm choosing the spin bike. We're gonna hit that little cog icon. We're gonna scroll down one time to share HR with other devices. We select that, we add a new device, and it pairs. There it is, the device has been found. The watch says pairing done, and we're already connected. At this moment, the Ignite 2 is the only watch in Polar's lineup that can do it. However, I have been told that in the future, Polar is going to be sending out a firmware update, which is going to allow that to happen for those watches. But for right now, this is where it's at. Okay, let me just start my screen capture because I want to compare some of the heart rate data from the Ignite 2 to the Vantage M2, the two watches that I've been using for the last 2 weeks. 90% of the time, at least, no, 99% of the time, the two watches are incredibly similar when it comes to heart rate. Distance, as I said earlier in the video, they've been a little off. So we can see right here, this is a run from the 12th of April. The Polar Ignite 2 recorded 16.32 kilometers. The Polar Vantage M2 recorded 16.28 kilometers. So that's 0.04 kilometers difference, with the M2 coming just a little short of the Ignite 2. But let's just scroll down. I want to show you the heart rate data. If you look at this heart rate data, we are seeing a very similar track, which to me is incredibly impressive. If we just look at this data here, we can see that maybe the Ignite 2 was at 122, while the M2 was at 120. Negligible difference. Now remember, I'm wearing the Ignite 2 on my right wrist and the M2 on my left wrist. Maybe that had something to do with reading the difference. I don't know. I'm going to show you one more thing, because most of the runs have been like this, where they're very similar. Now we're going to come to the run I did this morning. This one was, actually it was a very similar distance. We can see here that the Polar Ignite 2 recorded 16.23 kilometers and the M2 recorded 16.29 kilometers. You're seeing what I'm seeing already? We start off fantastic. The Ignite 2 and the M2 are following the same track. Couple differences here and there. Then we get to some anomalies until about this point. Then it all goes sideways for the Ignite 2 for some reason. Now at this part of my run, I was just picking up the pace to do some strides. 30-second strides at the end of my run with 30 seconds off. So it was up and down, but for some reason, the Ignite 2 recorded my heart rate at almost a max effort. 184 is actually, it's right there at my max, if not maybe a little higher than my max heart rate. Unacceptable unless you kind of take this wrist-based optical heart rate monitors with a pinch of salt, and I think we all need to. If I'm doing an effort where heart rate is like the most important thing, and I need to be able to look at this data later on, I'm going to wear my Polar H10 heart rate monitor. That's a chest-based strap, and it's the gold standard. My heart rate recordings are going to be spot on with that. If, however, I want day-to-day running, I don't always want to put on a chest strap. The wrist-based heart rate monitors, they do the job until they don't, which is sometimes. But I only mentioned today's run where this jumped up as I picked up the pace because it is an anomaly. I just want to repeat that for most of my runs, the Ignite 2 recorded my heart rate very well. It was very consistent with the Vantage M2 and a lot better than the Vantage V2. I'm actually excited to see what Polar does when they release the Vantage V3, because I can't be the only one that's noticed a difference. The heart rate monitor in the Ignite 2 is supposed to be worse than the one in the V2, and yet I haven't found that to be the case. Guys, if you like wearing a running watch, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. I post new running videos at least twice a week. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.